everyone, you're listening to the First Year Decoded podcast hosted by IEEE UofT, the show that decodes the first year experience by providing valuable insights and experience from current engineering students. I'm your host, Brittany Chow, a Track 1 AC2T2 and one of the logistics directors at IEEE UofT. Along with producer Akinori Kimura, we will explore various topics of academia and professional development to help you succeed in your first year of engineering. In today's episode, we talked about transitioning from high school to university. This transition is a pivotal moment in life for many of us, where we experience tremendous growth, adjustments to a new environment, and increased expectations. At IEEE UofT, we received a lot of questions about the increased workload in university, the importance of knowing programming prior to university, and more. We invited two special guests, Americo Barros and Selena Liu, to talk about these topics with us. Our discussion involved perspectives from different academic backgrounds and programming experiences, which led to an insightful discussion that would be valuable for any first-year engineering students. Hey guys, so thank you for coming on this show. So why don't we start off with you guys introducing yourself a little bit. Americo, do you mind going first?
Yeah, sure. So my name is Americo. I am a ECE 2T2 T1 plus PEY, which means I'm electrical computer engineer graduating in 2022 with a PEY coming up because I'm currently going into third year, and I was also track 1 first year, so that's the T1 in the 2T2 T1 plus PEY.
Right. I'm Selena. I am an electrical engineering student at UofT, and I'm 2T3 plus PEY, so I have 1 year of co-op, and I'm part of the IEEE club at UofT.
Amazing. This episode, we're going to be talking about transition between high school and university. So maybe we can start a little bit with kind of like what your high school background is.
Sure, I'll start, I guess. So I went to school just actually a few minutes outside of Toronto in a city called Oshawa. From there, I was I had a really great physics teacher that got me interested in kind of engineering, and as well, I had a really great chemistry teacher. So that was my background in engineering. At first, I really thought I was destined to go into chemical engineering, actually, because my chemistry teacher was really, really great. That changed over time. But I think what really inspired me to go into engineering was just my love for science and math through high school and elementary school.
Yeah, so I went to like the only high school in my city. Its walls was filled with asbestos, but that's another thing. I also had a great physics teacher. I did IB in high school, so that prepared me a bit for university, but I did IB HL math and physics. And I didn't enjoy math as much as physics, but I like both. My physics teacher was like this, old school Russian lady, and she was very traditional with that sort of thing, but I still enjoyed it a lot.
I was saying that my school didn't even offer IB, so that wasn't even an option for me. I just had to take normal Ontario math curriculum, which is considered much worse than most other provinces. So that was an exciting thing to go into university knowing. Everyone just saying, yeah, Ontario's math curriculum is significantly worse.
I came from a BC high school, and I would probably say something similar, because in terms of like how much I learned, like how much math I learned, how much physics I was taught, it was not really sufficient going into first year, which I definitely struggled with a little bit, but I don't think it's a big issue overall, because like for a lot of people it's review. I just have to like work harder.
Sometimes even if the topics were covered in high school, like the key difference between university and high school, like from my experience, is that they require like a much deeper understanding in the topic. So like applying the concepts for different problem solving skills, whereas in high school it's like sort of plug it in and go. So
yeah. So like I guess one of the main courses I was talking about was calculus. So would you say for you, like, even though you did like IB Calc, I don't know if that's a thing, but would you say that it didn't help you too much when university, or would you say you had like a much easier time?
So calc in university, the course was, well, in high school, our like HL course like covered the majority of the topics in university calc 1 and 2. Um, but I think that played to like my disadvantage because I overestimated how much I already knew in high school, and then when I came to it, I didn't work as hard at it, so it was actually like not one of my better courses.
Interesting. Yeah, what was the hardest course for you, Americo?
For me, I'd say Calc 2 was the most difficult. And in first semester, it definitely would have been Calc 1. Both of the calculuses were difficult, and that is also because I felt not only was the curriculum not super well done, but the curriculum in my high school, I mean, but also my teacher didn't go super in depth when he was teaching it when I was in high school, so I felt like I was in disadvantage at first. U of T does a really good job doing a full review at the beginning of the year of what you should know going into it. So whatever I wasn't really caught up to speed on, they really try and get everyone up to speed. So a lot of the stuff that we did in the review was review for me, and some of it was new. But by the end of that, I felt like I was prepared to go into it. So while I didn't already know integration like a lot of the other people did already know, I wasn't also behind where they expected me to be by the time we completed that.
Would you say it was one of the harder courses for you, or are there any like other particular courses that kind of stood out for you in first year?
In first year, yeah, there was definitely some other courses besides Calc 2. I'm just trying to remember all of the courses.
That's
I'd
fair,
say
yeah.
some of the other difficult ones were ECE 110, Electrical Fundamentals. I found that one particularly difficult, as well as the linear algebra course.
Oh, I agree. It's very proof-based, right?
Yeah, it was very proof-based, and I had never seen a proof in my life before. So going into university, all of a sudden them saying like, this proves that, I was like, whoa, unless it's trig, I don't know how to do a proof.
I remember for our year, the first ever midterm was linear algebra. And I remember going to take it, coming back, and I was just traumatized. I was like, what just happened? It was, yeah, like thinking back, it was pretty funny, but I stayed up all night after that studying. Like, of course, that didn't help any bit, but it's just like a emergency, like, oh, I gotta do that kind of thing.
That test is interesting to look back on too, because it really was, since we had that test within the first 3 weeks of taking all of our courses. So most courses were still doing high school review, let alone teaching new content. So that test was on some very simple things. But I think what was really interesting about that exam was that they didn't really make it too difficult looking back at it. I think they really tried, they knew that this was our first university exam that we were going to be taking, and they really tried to ease us into it. So even though it was difficult, it wasn't worth a crazy amount for the entire year, and it was definitely a good sense of what exams were going to be going into the future.
Were there any crazy courses for you too, Selena?
Crazy courses?
Yeah.
Well, not really.
Okay.
I enjoyed the courses a lot. Like they were definitely challenging, and like linear algebra was one of the most challenging ones. But I agree with what you said that I remember the first midterm. They definitely made it easier than what it seemed like it would have been in class because they wanted to make sure that everyone was on the same page. And I wanted to add how you mentioned that like they try to like make everyone start with the same level. The U of T does a thing with IB that like in other universities, if you take an HL course, you can skip like a first year course, but U of T, yeah. So a lot of my friends skipped like a bunch of like half of their first year classes and started with second year classes. But U of T engineering specifically does not let you take any of the credits over. So there's like you're forced to start there, and I think that's like a great idea because it makes you realize like the gaps in knowledge that you have from high school, and then makes sure that everyone's like filled in when they start.
I think I was talking to Aki like earlier, and he did all APs in his high school, and he was saying that he also couldn't take any of the credits.
I couldn't transfer any of the credits. I was pretty sad because I was thinking of like going to U.S. schools like as an option, and so I was thinking that like all the exams and the courses I take in high school I could transfer in university, but like all that money I spent didn't transfer.
Yeah.
But it did teach me a lot about like the work ethic required for like a university level course, and like the content also really exposed me to some of the contents that were covered in university.
One of the courses that like U of T designed, we call it ESP.
Engineering strategies and
Yeah.
practices.
Yes. I still remember, I think everyone whines about that course, but I feel like to some extent, like, it does kind of help you understand like what engineering writing is, and especially teamwork, because there has been like team conflicts that I've heard, like the stories that I've heard from my friends. And it's always interesting to kind of go through that before you actually just get pushed into the real world.
ESP was great, I think, like a great introduction into working as engineers, because I think a lot in high school, you have a very specific way that you like to operate, and a specific way that you like to solve problems and approach doing things that maybe other people don't really have, because you're in high school, you are mixed with, you know, people that are going into nursing or becoming a doctor or becoming a lawyer, so everybody has a different focus. When you're in engineering, everybody has the same focus, and so you're working with people with a lot of the exact same mindset, and so working within a group of engineers is so different and has such a different workflow than working in a group of other people from high school, and it's a really great introduction to that kind of atmosphere.
It's also pretty good at introducing like to professional industry, like in addition to all that you just said. In high school, if you're working on your own project, like I like to tinker with Arduinos when I was in high school, and then when you get into this course, you're taught like all the industry standards, like you have to check all these codes and making sure that you're up to standard if you're working with a company. So it gives you a really good idea of what it's like to work with a professional team of engineers.
You just mentioned that you play with like Arduinos a lot.
Yeah, I did a little bit of coding in high school. Well, first we don't have a very good CS like structure or like courses in our school. I know some of my friends had like computer engineering in high school.
That's crazy.
Yeah, but we had a coding course where we did some Python. And then afterwards, my brother, he was a computer engineer, and now he's a doctor. He pushed me to, yeah, let's just go over that fact.
Yeah.
But he pushed me to learn, like, to develop some apps, and then I got really into that. So, like, programming in Swift is definitely a lot more high level than, like, programming in C, which is, like, very low level. So it did help me to some extent, but again, you are learning a new language like everyone else, so, and like facing
Do you think
problems.
that kind of helps you though with starting first year and knowing how to code and all that kind of stuff?
I think it made me more confident in joining clubs or like design teams, because like you require those skills to build something for that team or contribute more to it. So that definitely made me more confident that way. I'm not sure if it was that helpful because we did APS 105, that's the computer fundamentals course in first year. And I know overall that course was quite challenging for everyone involved, including like people who did know how to code.
Yeah, I always wondered that side because before university, like first year, I was always like, wait, I'm going to engineering. Should I learn some coding? At the end, I didn't, and I was super worried, but I don't know. It turned out fine for me, although it was definitely challenging, that course.
I felt this same. I think for that course, for me, I went into university not having ever coded. So that definitely made me nervous because was looking at Reddit beforehand and trying to find out basically as much about U of T engineering before I could. I was eager beaver, just wanted to like know everything I could going into it. And so I saw that a lot of people were going into university already knowing how to code. But similar to math, they try and get everyone up to the same speed, and so for coding they just assume that nobody knows how to code, which is really useful because for me, for someone who doesn't know how to code and is now going into computer engineering, it really did clearly worked for me because for computer fundamentals where we started doing C, that was really the first time I've ever started looking at code. I'd never really seen code
Yeah.
before that. And I kind of did better in that class than I did in any other class all year, which was very surprising for me because that was one of the like notoriously difficult courses, but it was something I was definitely interested in, and for some reason
Mm-hmm.
it just clicked for me, and I really enjoyed it. So I don't think going in as someone who doesn't code or didn't know how to code before was something that was detrimental to me. I don't think I really could have done better than I already did in that course. It was a lot of fun, and learning it. They did a really great job teaching it. And one of the nice things about U of T is that since there are so many students, there's so many different lecture sections and so many different teachers. So if one teacher doesn't really fit your teaching style, you can go to another one. I know a lot of people for that course decided to go to a different professor. I tried out two different professors. One of my friends tried out three different professors before she found one that she liked for that course. Um, and she stuck with a third one. I stuck with a second one, and we liked them for different reasons. And yeah, that was my kind of experience with that course. It was a very positive one.
Yeah, I feel like that's just one of the those kind of expectations versus reality kind of things, right? Like I came into university fully just expecting like, okay, Brenny, don't think you're going to get high grades. You just want to pass. Like I was kind of filled with that mindset, which I think
Hmm.
is okay. It worked for me, but I don't know if it works for everyone, but that like relieved a lot of my stress on myself.
I definitely came in with the same mindset. But like America, you said, for all the courses, they do a really good job in making sure that everyone can succeed as long as they work hard at it. It's not like your background doesn't
Definitely.
affect you that
Yeah.
much.
I came in with the exact same mindset. Like, again, one of those things I read on Reddit was that if you go in thinking you're going to get the same grades that you got in high school, which everybody's coming in with, high 80s, low, like, or
High
90s
grades, yeah.
averages, you're kind of on a high horse, and one of the first things U of T does is it brings you down to where you really are. Because everybody got 90s in high school and then everybody got 90s in university, then it wouldn't really be showing how well we actually know the content because they're just testing us on, I guess, the easiest stuff. They really want to push you to your limit so that there is some kind of delineation between how much am I actually learning. Because if I was getting 90s in everything, then I wouldn't feel like I need to try as hard than if I'm getting lower and I have something to work towards.
Would you say it's really competitive though, like in U of T engineering?
No, not at all. That's one of the biggest things that I was surprised about. I mean, at least for ECE, I know that some other engineering can be a different atmosphere, but especially for ECE, everybody's very much trying to help each other. Unless you have those certain projects that are on leaderboards, because we do
Yeah.
have those a lot, where it's like coding projects are on a leaderboard. The higher you are on the leaderboard, the more prizes you get. And so people might not share their code in those cases, but otherwise people really
Hmm.
do try and help you. If you have any questions, people are eager to help, and they do want you to succeed because there isn't that competitive atmosphere. If other people do better, you're not going to do worse
I feel
because
like
of
it's
it.
more of a at U of T engineering, it's like a kind of survive together or you just all fail together kind of situation is what I've felt. Yeah. But you
Exactly.
mentioned that you worked on some projects. Coming from my perspective, sometimes when I think back to high school Brittany, I'm like, whoa, like I never would have thought that I can do anything related to coding and all that kind of stuff. When I heard there was going to be coding projects, obviously for engineering, I was just so scared for it. But like, how do you feel right now that looking back on those projects?
Well, I personally, like, I think it's wild because when you're doing it, you kind of see behind the magic curtain, and you really see what's going on, and so being able to look behind the curtain and like it kind of it reduces the magic down for you, and you're not as excited. But I definitely know, looking back into it, thinking about what we were going to do for the end of the year, first semester in linear algebra, one of the final projects, you get to choose between a big selection of things that you can do with a number set, and one of them was detect the different parts of a heartbeat and you can, depending on the different parts of the heartbeat rate monitor, you can detect different diseases of the heart. And even just being able to do something that, looking at the actual code that you wrote from MATLAB, it was super, super simple stuff. But at the beginning of the year, thinking about being able to do that, I'm like, oh my God, I'm going to be able to write code that will actually be able to read an ECG machine that can detect different heart diseases accurately. Like, that mind-blowing stuff.
I feel like that's like just like a big moment that I feel like I've accomplished a lot of things in university, just like when I finished whatever project that I knew zero about maybe like 2 weeks ago.
Absolutely. In second year, something that you get to look forward to as an EC student was Google Maps. And I remember in first year thinking, that is some insurmountable kind of task. Like, how the heck are you going to do it? And once you get there, it was
actually
exciting.
Super fun. Yeah,
I think in first year we had one project for APS 105 Computer Fundamentals. We had to create a game and like an algorithm, and there was a leadership board for that. Definitely, like I wanted to keep exploring like projects on the side, because what I found is like I learn best by doing, and that's how I learned how to program. It's like making my own apps, like if I have an idea. So like I really wanted to join design teams. Like I remember before I even joined U of T, like back here in BC, I was searching up like the different design teams that I could join. Like I really liked UTAT, and that was the first club I joined. But I think the aspect of clubs that I liked most was if we were actually hands-on projects. And that's something IEEE really lets you do, like actually building some projects by yourself. Like we were doing a temperature sensing project, and I also joined during my first year was UTRA, like the Robotics Association, and we got to build a small like Arduino robot to fight against other small robots that other teams make. So that was really fun. I think the idea is being able to use those skills in the industry. So you are building like small projects now as like part of design teams, but eventually if you develop those skills enough, you can apply them in like a job or an internship and actually like make a bigger difference that way.
Would you say it was hard to contribute as a first year though in design teams or in clubs?
Yeah, I definitely felt that, especially in UTEP, because it's a very inside run team. And sometimes I remember we were doing research for the mission concept for our next CubeSat, and we were speaking to a professor about whether or not the mission concept was feasible. And he said, maybe if you had about 2 years and a team of graduate students who specialized in this, it could happen in about 5 years. And we were like, okay. So sometimes it does feel like that, but other times it's very inspiring to see like something you can do to help.
Yeah, I'm actually super impressed how many design teams you joined. I didn't join any in my year. Mainly in my first year, I was just trying to figure out school. In first semester at least. Second semester, I was like joining some maybe dance groups or something like that. But I'm just wondering how you balance your time in first year, because I definitely had some trouble going about that.
That's under the assumption that I did balance my time.
That is, yes, of course.
Yeah, I remember like I talked to my brother a lot about like planning academically, and he told me straight off the bat, like first week, because that's when clubs day started happening, or like he started hearing about this. He's like, don't join like too many clubs, like join 3 maximum. And I remember I signed up for like 10 during club day.
It's always like that. I remember that too.
It's a bad idea, but eventually
you have to manage your time, obviously, and when school like actually starts to hit you with all the classes and all the homework, you start to realize like, yeah, I really can't do this. So you have to prioritize, but mainly just find something that you like to do, like one of the clubs that you genuinely like, and not something that you think, oh, would look good on your resume, and that will help you like
I think my strategy was just to sign up for any clubs at the beginning, and which I think it's valid, but at the end of the day, maybe I'll spend the first month, which nothing really happens, to kind of like decide which one I want to stay at. But you definitely need to make sure that you have your priorities straight. So Americo, I was wondering, because during the pre-session, you mentioned that you were also in one of the clubs as well in first year.
Yeah, so first semester, kind of like what you guys said, I did want to take a minute because the transition to university was something I was, really focused on making it as smooth as possible. So I did hold out on joining a group for a semester. There was times that I was like, okay, I definitely have some extra time now. I could have joined a group, and people do make it work. But I think I was happy because in second semester, after I'd gotten a little bit more used to it, most clubs have a second recruiting cycle where at the beginning of second semester, they put feelers out to new people who wanted to join. So one of those people were me. I was joining UTAT Space Systems, which is the University of Toronto Aerospace team. I joined the satellite division in communications. So we were kind of working on communicating with the satellite, and it was a satellite that we were supposed to launch this summer 2020. I don't know if it did launch. I think it did. Anyways, yeah, I joined that and I was with it for a little bit. It was very great because right at the beginning, you kind of set expectations there. And so for me, someone who really did not have a humongous amount of time to contribute to this club, but still wanted to be a part of it in some way because I was interested in it, I made that clear. From the first meeting, I told the people who were higher up saying, like, I want to be able to contribute to this. How am I going to be able to do that having no prior coding experience? Because at that point, all we had done is MATLAB, which is really just for numbers. And this is something that needs a lot more complex of a language. And how can I contribute, not having a huge responsibility on my back? And they really worked around that. They were very accommodating, even though I couldn't show up to every single meeting or I couldn't take on like projects that would take hours and hours each week to do. They made me feel included in the group. They made me feel very updated with what was going on and kind of excited about what was coming up in the group, even though I didn't have a lot of time to contribute to it. I really had a good time.
Yeah, I feel like for design teams, I think it is harder for first years to kind of be like stepping up, like I want to take charge of this if they don't know anything. But everyone's kind of been through that phase. So if you really want to help and you're putting the time into it or the thought into it, like they are willing to kind of like give you some more work or just teach you how to go through that too.
Absolutely. They wanted to. Part of my stuff there was, since we were working with stuff that needed code, we were learning C, the programming language, in that semester, and we were also coding in C in that club. So in the club, I needed to know a lot more about C than what we were doing in class at the time. So the person above me said, "Hey, these are some resources. These are the things that you need to know going into it." And so one weekend, I just kind of put aside some time to really focus on exactly what was relevant to the club so that I could start contributing in that way. And it wasn't too difficult. Like, they really do try and teach you. They know where you're at because a lot of them have already been in your position. A lot of them were ECE students. A lot of them were NSci students. So they know what you already know and what you don't know. They can sympathize in that way. And that's kind of what happened with me. I learned the C ahead of time, like ahead of the class schedule, and was able to contribute in a pretty big way with the
Yeah, I feel like being able to do something other than school sometimes really does help relieve your like mental stress or just pressure, because I definitely had a lot of pressure by myself. Like I was just like, Brenny, you have to do well, like you're not good enough yet. But I feel like everyone has that moments, especially when you're in engineering. There's always someone smarter than you.
It can feel like that, going from being like the top of your class to going and being maybe one of the lower, or even you kind of know your spot, and it's hard not to focus on that. I know my roommate first year, he was prepared for the grade hit that was going to happen when he started, and it was very difficult for him to grapple with the fact that, like, I'm no longer, the best in the class. As narcissistic as that sounds, it's a very common feeling. And just being able to accept that not being the best or not having really, really high grades isn't something that you should focus on as much as the fact that it shows that you're learning something. You shouldn't compare yourselves to others because you aren't in the same spot. For example, I didn't take IB or any AP classes, so I didn't already know half of the stuff or all the stuff from Calc 1 and Calc 2. I was learning it all new. So I shouldn't be comparing myself to Selena because I'm not in the same
That's fair.
situation
I feel
as
like
Selena.
a lot of students go through that without knowing that they're kind of like that's something that everyone thinks about, and just comparing is something, it doesn't help with your self-growth. It just kind of puts you down sometimes. It is motivating sometimes, but in a bad way. Yeah.
Yeah, for sure. Like in first year, I know a lot of my friends, and me included, like struggle with that, because when you're put into that new situation where you're meeting so many different people, sometimes it is sort of instinct for us to be like, oh, compare yourself to them and see like how you compare. And that can be really discouraging, but also motivating. So you have to balance that, like be aware of your own weaknesses and your own strengths, and just work on improving
Just
yourself rather than
recognizing
comparing.
that everyone around you might be going through the same thing might be able to help you get through it too.
Yeah, regardless of where you are, you always want to be doing better than what you are. So if you're getting a 60, then you're just dying to be the person that's getting a 70. If you're getting a 70, you're dying to be the person that gets an 80. If you get an 80, etc., etc. So I think it's easy to fall into that trap, but if you're not using it in a constructive way to say like, oh, he's getting 80 on this assignment, I got 70 or 60, and are you using that to compare yourself and say like I'm worse than them or I'm not as smart? Or are you saying that it is, what is he doing successfully that I can do to get to that point? You can use it constructively, or you can use it to your detriment, and it's really something that you do have to focus on, so you don't kind of fall into that pity party that can easily happen.
As the last question, I would like to ask you guys, what's your one tip that you would want to let the first years know how to survive first year?
Obviously, like we're looking at entering school this year during a pandemic, so there's going to be challenges, like new challenges for everyone. I think like definitely, like if you're going to university like as a first year, you're meeting a lot of new people, and for me, I was like one of the only people who from my high school went into engineering at U of T. So everyone's like a new face, a new person. Yeah. So like even though we are online, or if some people are in person, like talk to the people around you, because like we've talked about today, like the community is really great and really encouraging to help you succeed in whatever you're trying to do. So just being able to talk to everyone and make some new friends and have that support system there for you, because going through it like by yourself is definitely going to be a struggle. Yeah.
I think my tip would be to try and focus on the positives, because it's really tough. The first year is tough because you're learning a lot of new things, you're meeting a lot of new people, you're in a new environment, and it's easy to start being really hard on yourself, and that's not super constructive. It's focusing on not only I got maybe a 60 or 70 on this assignment, or I don't really understand what's going on in this class, but like really making sure that you're taking time to pat yourself on the back for the things that you do accomplish. Like, I studied really hard for this and I'm happy with how much I got done, or like I'm like up to date on my homework for this thing. Celebrate the little things so that you still have those positives, and you're not just really, really focused on the negatives.
Well, thank you guys for coming out today. I'm sure a lot of first years would find this really useful, and hopefully we've kind of like helped them feel more at ease and less nervous about first year this year. Well, that's all for today's episode of First Year Decoded. Thanks for listening, and thank you once again to Americo and Selena for joining me today. Remember to tune in next week for a detailed breakdown of each of the Core 8 courses. This podcast is hosted by IEEE UofT, content creation done by Akinori Kimura, Brenny Child, Himanish Jindal, Hao Zhang, and Catherine Leung. Music created by Kushaga Gold, audio edited by Shui Guang, and graphics done by Kathy Zhang. Special thanks to Americo Barros and Selena Liu for being on the show with us today. Shout out to Sashwa Panwar for helping us with external outreach, and David Baines with coming up with the name of our podcast. Remember to follow us on our social media, IEEE UofT, to get more information and updates about future events and more content. Once again, thanks for listening to First Year Decoded, and we will see you on the next episode.